Sometimes a single soundbite can say it all. And although Leslie Moonves wasn't speaking for the entire U.S. news media, he may as well have been. The CEO of CBS said on the eve of Super Tuesday, a potentially pivotal voting day in the race for the White House, that the Donald Trump phenomenon, quote, may not be good for America, but it's damn good for CBS, unquote. Trump's ascent on the Republican side has boosted ratings for America's corporate news networks, which then provide Trump with a disproportionate amount of airtime because it's good for business. And on it goes. The anti-establishment candidate on the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders, gets a fraction of the coverage that Donald Trump gets, which has his supporters scratching their heads and calling foul. Sanders is in an uphill climb to get past Hillary Clinton and the impression provided in the mainstream news media that Clinton is the presumptive, inevitable nominee. But our starting point this week is a television event that summed up the circus on the GOP side. Last week's CNN Republican debate in Houston.
It's so great to be here with friends and the press and the media.
The Trump campaign has been called car crash TV, which is why so many Americans are tuning in. But what happened in Houston on CNN's watch was like a multi-vehicle pileup at the intersection of American politics and media.
There's a lot of fun up here tonight, I have to tell you.
It was like watching a substitute teacher try to control like the worst kids in the school.
Well, hold on, I'm going to get my answer. He doesn't get to yell in the whole time.
I want to move on. These are the rules.
He can't move on. We're moving on.
You know what?
Like they were just running all over him. You know, it was like the food fight in the lunchroom.
Interrupted the whole time.
You had a chance.
Blitzer couldn't control what was going on, which is symptomatic of the fact that the media's been unable to control Trump in any way. But there were a lot of softball questions.
How are you going to make them pay for the wall?
I will, and the wall just got 10 feet taller, believe me.
Trump wasn't challenged on a lot of his statements. There were many issues that were completely skirted over. It was a very disappointing debate from a standpoint of media criticism.
If I were the host of a Donnybrook like that, I would have let him go as well. I don't fault the host at all.
I mean, first of all, this guy's a joke artist, and this guy's a liar.
I think that exposed the Republican Party for their mean-spiritedness.
If he hadn't inherited $200 million, you know where Donald Trump would be right now? Selling watches in Manhattan.
And it absolutely showed their lack of discipline.
The reason you're welcome to have the check back.
And I think, actually, the host did a good job by letting them hang themselves.
It reflects how cowed the media is by Trump. Megyn Kelly of Fox News asked him very tough questions.
In 2004, you said in most cases you identified as a Democrat. When did you actually become a Republican?
And he punished Fox for it. So CNN decides to send in its most ineffectual person, because if they were to send somebody more assertive, there could be blowback from Trump and a threat of not getting ratings in this race.
The narrative around Donald Trump has taken a sharp turn, with questions like, can this anti-establishment demagogue actually win the Republican nomination, giving way to, can he be stopped? And the media outlets that gave rise to Trump, the news broadcasts that gave him more coverage last month than the rest of the Republican field combined, are asking the same question. During his days at ABC News, Ted Koppel was considered the best interviewer in the business. This past week, he went on Fox News and said the channel, its lust for ratings, and other channels like it have made Trump possible.
I've interviewed him a number of times. Not an easy interview. How would you do it?
It's irrelevant how I would do it. And you know who made it irrelevant? You did. You have changed the television landscape over the past 20 years. You took it from being objective and dull to being subjective and entertaining. And the fact of the matter is, his audience is not even a television audience. It's an audience on Twitter. They deal in messages of 140 characters or less, which keeps it nice and simple.
Not everyone in the corporate-owned, commercially driven U.S. news media is conflicted over the Trump story. The CEO at CBS, Leslie Moonves, admits Trump is better for his network than he is for the country, and that was no slip of the tongue. Moonves has said it before.
What he was saying it was damn good for CBS was actually a follow-up to something that he had said to investors and shareholders on a conference call back in December, where he cheered "Go Donald, go," in reference to the fact that Trump was creating all of these controversies. In fact, Les Moonves made that comment in December on the same day that Donald Trump was calling for a ban on all Muslims entering the United States of America. And he was saying it not from a policy perspective, but what Moonves was saying was that this is great for business.
All of the network executives have one thing in mind, and that's making money. So when Moonves says that it's good for CBS, he's talking from a profit and loss standpoint. When he talks about the country, he's circumventing the responsibility of journalism, in my opinion, and basically saying to the American people, well, we're going to do business and the chips are going to fall where they may, which I think is dangerous.
Because you see networks rely on Trump for ratings, which means that they give him more airtime, which means that his message gets more airtime compared to other candidates. And when someone's preaching a message as hateful and scary and demagogic as Trump is, that creates a real dilemma. So even if many people in the media don't actually want Trump to win, they are in this sort of sick, mutually beneficial relationship.
On the Democratic side, the complaints over coverage, primarily the lack of it, come from the Sanders camp. The senator from Vermont who wants to break up the big banks and take on Wall Street has raised more money in donations from individual Americans than any candidate ever, but the coverage of his campaign fails to reflect that. Bernie Sanders is up against the better-known and supremely well-connected Hillary Clinton, on whom the U.S. mainstream media have placed an aura of inevitability. That's the conventional wisdom on the mainstream airwaves. One of the reasons for that impression, according to TheIntercept.com, is that the news networks often use pundits presented as analysts who have ties to Clinton, but who are seldom identified that way.
Some of these pundits are actually paid by the Clinton campaign or have close ties to consultancies that work for the campaign. They absolutely should be disclosed by the media organizations.
Joining us now on the set is CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist Linda Tran.
So that we know that what we're getting is a piece of unpaid advertising.
And that applies across the board because disclosure doesn't just, begin and end with these political consultants. It's a much bigger problem in the lead up to the Iraq War where, military contractors and security consultants were on air.
It's a very well laid out plan.
None of their financial relationships or even their associations were being disclosed or discussed, and they were just beating the drumbeat for war on air. So this transparency issue affects, much more than just the political process.
The networks want Hillary Clinton to win, and they're positioning people on the air to make sure she is going to win. Wall Street does not want Bernie Sanders. Wall Street will accept Hillary Clinton. And the fact is, the major media outlets in this country don't want to see Wall Street attacked because they're big-time advertisers. There is no question that there is a sell job being made on the American people right now.
That can be said about both major parties, both sets of candidates. Two contests, and the media aren't just telling the story. They and their ratings are a big part of it. That's the bottom line. On the download now, our viewers weigh in on the coverage of the U.S. election.
Unintelligible yelling in the Republican presidential debate in Houston, Texas, when they simply gave up. CNN moderator Wolf Blitzer's inability to control this situation was reminiscent of a previous debate in South Carolina, when CBS's John Dickerson humorously quipped, "Don't make me turn this car around." These candidates knew full well that bickering was exactly the way to get the attention they wanted. Perhaps it was the incessant coverage afforded to Donald Trump every time he opened his mouth to insult someone. But buckle your seatbelts, America. There's a lot more unintelligible yelling between here and November.